Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to The Last Stand. We've got some great guests for you tonight. As you can see, we're honored to be joined by Gunther Sonnenfeld and the one and only Monica Diaz Campbell.
That's right. And I will be in the background.
And myself. And tonight we're going to be talking about source and God conflict. We're going to be talking about the perception of God as an external thought form. We're going to talk about man versus God as an expression of source and God and discerning our true power and unique expressions of divinity. We're going to talk about becoming the angelic archetype. And you can tell Jay wrote this because it says that demon shit is like so yesterday.
Actually, he wrote that. I was laughing. I was like,
I was channeling Jay when I wrote that.
You were.
Sure was.
And we're going to talk about how to nurture internal power, self-love, self-responsibility, self-expression, and co-creating vision for the world and your world. And we're also going to talk about letting go, moving beyond the dialectical thought forms from this or that to plus and other. And I don't know if this was written by Gunther or Jay, but at the end it says, boom.
That was Jay.
That's a Jayism.
But that actually is a Guntherism too. He does that.
That's a Jayism.
Is it?
And it's usually boom.
So let me just say real quick for everybody that's watching us, it's an honor to have Gunther. He has an incredibly prodigious intellect, and also beyond his intellect, he has an incredible heart chakra. I've known Gunther for almost 3 years now. We met through the power of social media on Twitter, I think. And we talk. We've never actually met in person. That was close to happening. It didn't happen, but we will eventually meet in person soon. He's an amazing guy. And then obviously this woman right here, she puts up with me, so she's incredible. But like when he sent me the topics tonight, I didn't even tell everybody who's watching. I didn't tell Jeff that I was going to bring Monica on because I thought, it would be really good to hear from like a divine feminine female aspect of the things we're talking about, because we are talking about extremely positive message. Yeah. We're not talking about aliens and conspiracy.
You and I are really in touch with our feminine side.
We're not talking about.
We're not talking about aliens and conspiracies and David Icke and the demiurgic construct and whether Trump is a reptilian and all these things anymore. We're talking about very positive message tonight. So with that said, you guys, I'm going to let you guys talk about these things. I'm just kind of moderating in the background. Jeff, you do your thing with the chat room.
Gunther, tell us a little bit about who you are and summarize your work for us. I think you're new to a lot of the people on the channel.
Yeah, so my vocation by trade is I'm a venture capitalist. I've been in technology for about 23 or 24 years, but it comes with a bent. Most of my work has been done in the social and ecological impact spaces. So everything that we do is oriented towards doing good for society and the planet in whatever iterations those come in. So I have a small investment bank advisory and a venture fund, and we invest in those types of ventures, and they're driven by blockchain and DLT technologies. So I'm sure everybody's heard of the blockchain before, but it's a very new domain, and it's exciting because it entails a lot of innovation in terms of creating new economic models. So I suppose my lot in life is to create a new alternative economic system, and that's what I've been working towards for 25 years.
Gunther, that's fascinating to me, because most of the time when we think about venture capitalists and we think about folks that raise money and folks that fund startups, we really think of Shark Tanks, and we think of cutthroat. We think of nothing but the bottom line. We think of the old Jay Campbell "F you, pay me" type of mentality. Yes. And you're turning that paradigm completely upside down and really taking taking their playbook and using it for the betterment of humanity. That's rather exciting, my friend.
It is exciting and extremely challenging at times, but that's part of the fun, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Monica Diaz Campbell, tell our audience a little bit about who you are.
A little bit about who I am. Well,
She's married to me.
I'm married to the Great White Dragon.
Does she need anything else?
Okay, so I'm also known as the Rainbow Unicorn because I fart rainbows. And I'm just on a journey of exploration, and I'm having a really great time with my hubby. I don't know. What do you want to know?
Well, I'll tell you, folks, that Monica Diaz Campbell is one of the great real estate minds in Southern California. She runs one of the most powerful and innovative, with Jay, of course, one of the most powerful, innovative real estate firms in Southern California. If you're in the LA area, need to sell a home, they're the people you need to talk to. And she may be more than anybody else, and I don't think Jay would argue with this, responsible for helping Jay Campbell become the spiritual dynamo that he is today.
There's without question, 100%. She is my greatest coach and teacher. And without her, I would definitely not be the man that I am becoming. How's that?
Well, so I wanted to say something with respect to that, because it's not necessarily me. What it truly is, and this is what I found in a relationship, it's when you can truly accept somebody for who they are. And so when I first met Jay, and I had a conversation with our massage therapist today about this, I first met him, and I was already so comfortable with who I was, and I could sense things that when he first embraced me and I felt his heart, I knew who he was, even though he had all these blocks up. And when you can accept somebody for who they are, regardless of what they're showing you, and you know who they are, and you keep that vision in mind, it's so cool what shows up. And he is more than what I ever thought he could be in this given point in time. And our relationship is like so awesome. I absolutely love it, and I adore him.
I adore this woman too. She's amazing.
And you guys,
blessed.
And I have to tell you that it came with a lot of work. And so if any of you are having challenges in your relationship and you feel like it sucks or whatever it is, one, take a look in the mirror and see how you're showing up. Two is work on it. It takes work. When you want to have a really good connection with your mate, it's not about putting them down when they're not showing up as you need them to show up.
Absolutely. And, Monica, this kind of goes right into the first topic that Gunther wrote for us, talking about the perception of God being external. But the first time you hugged Jay didn't even know who or what he was, but you could sense that God source on the inside of him. Let's talk about that. Gunther, what were you talking about in that point? And Monica and Jay, feel free to jump in and respond to our special guest, Gunther Sonnenfeld.
Well, it's a great question and mode of exploration for humanity right now. And I guess the best way to frame it is we're at a point in time now where things are very chaotic and very uncertain. We've seen a lot of polarized narratives in society around race and gender identity, all these things. And of course, religion plays a big role in it. And what's happening is these doctrines of belief, these ideological systems, these narratives are actually religions in and of themselves. And so the externalization of the notion of God or higher power has really kind of existed at the level of idea. And what I mean by that is we've sort of become separated from this idea that God is within us, or that source is within us. And so God has evolved as a thought form, as a concept, whereas if we look at source as energy, as the way things are, as isness, as a way of becoming and evolving, for many of us, the challenge is not to get disconnected from this idea that we are expressions of the divine, right? And so of course, over time, religions have indoctrinated this belief that there's an external power that we pray to, that we are beholden to, and of course, we have intermediaries and priests and ordained ministers that can sort of guide us, and that's not an indictment in any way, but we've by and large lost touch with this idea that it's internal, right? That we are expressions of the divine, and so I think we're being faced with that now. We're being faced with it in our daily lives, and I think it shows up mostly in the way we abdicate our responsibilities to ourselves, our families, and the future. And people are waking up. So all of the chaos that has ensued has really sparked a revolution in not just thought, but this idea that we have to actually be accountable for ourselves. Searching for self-love, finding that God source energy within ourselves, and then manifesting it in very applicable and very discernible ways, very tangible ways, as opposed to just praying in a church or adhering to a belief system or being beholden to a set of ideas that don't necessarily serve us in the long run.
Gunther, I think you're 100% on. And I will say this, I'll say that I, as a former 20-year minister, am guilty as charged. In fact, religion depends upon the externalization of divinity. Religion is built upon the notion that you can't make it by yourself. That, in fact, rather than having divine within, you've got original sin within.
Yeah.
You need salvation, and they've got the only savior. So the paradigm is set up intentionally to keep you from realizing the divinity's within, make you think it's without, and make you believe they're the only ones with the path back to that divinity. And it is a sham, it is a travesty, it is a mockery, and I'm glad to be free of it. And every day I wake up and the first thing I do is ask for forgiveness for the 20 years I spent doing it, and hope I can do a little bit more today to help one more person than I hurt, if that's possible.
Well, you had to experience.
You're already forgiven.
Yeah.
Oh, I know I am.
Yeah, of course you are, and you've forgiven yourself. But you had to experience that, right? That was part of your process of becoming into your highest self, your truest self, and to be able to have that perspective, right?
Absolutely. But how do we go about discerning our true power without becoming little tin-pot dictators ourselves?
I think sorry.
No, go ahead, Mark.
Please.
I think the main thing is remembering, like, to come from a place of love. And one thing that triggered when you were speaking, Gunther, is that I think that, many times when people like either lose a loved one or they have a near-death experience and they realize the essence of who we are, and you feel that and you sense that, it's so magical and it's so beautiful. And when my mom passed away and I sensed her energy from her passing, because when she was in a coma, I was telling Jay, like, I could feel like she was attached to her body still, like through an umbilical cord, and she couldn't like release herself because she was obviously kept alive by the machines. And then when she actually passed and she came to me, and I felt, you guys, it's like you feel this love, this pure wave of love just come over you, and you know that that's God, that's source energy, and there's nothing like it, and you know that that's inside of you. And when you're still, and when you have moments, you could be out in nature sitting and reflecting, or you can be like just wherever you are in a place of just complete calm and quiet, and you go within and you focus on your breathing, and you just like you're still, and you ask for God. You're like, okay, God, I know you're here, and you listen, but not with your ears and not with your intellect, but with your heart. It's so there, and it's so freaking amazing that it's like this, you have this sense of like peace and calm, and you know that everything's great, everything's going to be okay. And some of the things that we worry about and stress about, they're so created in our mind from materialism. I mean, even I'm thinking about the holidays, like we're all, oh, this is Christ's birthday and we got to celebrate, everybody's going to do this, but everybody's acting like a freaking nutcase. Oh, I got to get parking. Oh, I got to get a gift. And hello, like, where's the God within? The God within is like, you know what? You're beautiful. I love you. We got this. Everything's going to work out. Not, that's mine. Give it to me. I had it first. We're in this delusional state of what's truly, truly important, because like you guys said, it's this external gratification rather than investing time with yourself. Even if you sit in front of a mirror and you look at yourself and you look in your eyes and you see your soul, you see who you are. Like, this is not us. This is nothing. This is just a shell. But your true essence and your true beauty that lies within is so magnificent. And yet we don't want to pay attention to it. Instead, we look at ourselves and we point out all our flaws and we say, no, how could God be within? Because I'm so messed up. Hello, you are God within. I am. Like when I say my affirmations and I am love, I am love. I am all that I am. I am that.
No doubt.
Sorry. Kind of went on.
doubt.
Go ahead, Jeff.
That's it. Drop the mic. We're done.
Yeah, I was just letting that sink in a little bit. It's powerful stuff, and there's really not much that you can say to respond to that. But what do you think, folks, is it just the 2,000 years of strong social conditioning? Is it the fear and guilt control matrix? Is it the Saturn matrix magnified by the moon that's directed at us? What is it that makes it so much easier for us to believe that we're sinners, that we're horrible, that we're decrepit? What makes it so much easier to believe that than to believe that we are divine, we are sovereign, we are free, and we just need a little help?
Go ahead, Gunther.
Oh, well, I think what you're describing is actually an externalization in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean specifically by that, to provide an analogy that's very simple, when people get caught up in this idea of a control system, or that, you know, they are doing this or whatever, and we know that there are powers that control the planet, at least in terms of, you know, material mechanics and,
sure,
and tricks and all that stuff. But in reality, it's really the analogy of the shepherd, and you have the herd, and you have the herd of animals, whether they're sheep or goat or whatever it is. There are natural behaviors that they exhibit, and they're sort of guides, and they do the thing. So when people, so in other words, it's convenient to say that these things are being done to us, or that we've been socially programmed. And there's lots of programming, don't get me wrong. I mean, if we take, you know, the Hegelian dialect as one example of a mental model that is pervasive throughout society, right, that's certainly the case at the mental level, the level concept. But the reality is that really what's happened is that the system of control is predicated on fairly predictable, fairly deterministic behaviors that are exhibited by humans and animals alike. I mean, hierarchies exist everywhere in nature, and people do what they do. And it doesn't mean that people are inherently greedy or they're inherently evil or whatever. It just means that we're predisposed to do certain things to survive, you know, to eat, to live, and all these things. But so I think it's really simple in that regard. Like we exhibit these certain behaviors, and we externalize the responsibility of doing things that are uncomfortable to us. So it's discomforting on a certain level to not overconsume. It's discomforting to maybe go outside our realms of what we think we know. It's discomforting to make sacrifices that we have some idea might benefit us and others in a certain way, but we don't go there because it's just not easy. And that's kind of where we've arrived. So with technology, with belief systems, with information systems, it's become easy and comfortable to not put ourselves in situations, experientially at least, where we go outside those comfort zones and really take in what's going on around us. And you know, that includes negative emotions and all. I mean, negative emotions are things that we use as navigation tools. It's not that you erase negative emotion, it's that you use it as a tool, as a lens for self-discovery, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be negative. It just means that you're having an experience, you go through it, and you take risks, and you come out the other side. It's to what you were saying earlier, Monica. But oftentimes we're taught that, well, we have 30-second meditations, or we have NLP, or we have psychology, or all these different things that are sort of pacifiers where we can avoid the elephant in the room, so to speak. And that's not really the point of existence, right? That's why we're human, is to experience those discomforts and have discoveries. That's basically it, I would think.
And I honestly think, like, so growing up, I was born and raised in a Catholic family, and you're taught like to come to God like in fear, like fear God.
Right.
Servitude. This is what we're taught, is like fear God and do all this stuff. But I think what happens is that people, like you're saying, Gunther, is that they get in this comfortable mode where this is what they're taught, so they don't go outside that realm. And yet we all have this still voice inside of us that is like speaking to us and saying, is this true? Is this true? Do you believe this? And yet we'll think that that's the devil, or we think that that's something else inside of us attempting to push us away from God, when really we're looking to this priest or whoever it is to allow us to have value, because this is the person that represents God. And yet in the Bible, it even says that God is within. And so it's interesting because the more conditioned we allow ourselves to be, the harder it is to get out of that. But if we were to pay attention to just little things like, even when I was little, I used to think to myself, like, why do I have to go to church on Sunday? And if I go to confession, all of a sudden everything I did is forgiven because I said 10 Hail Marys and 10 Our Fathers. So now I can go back and make the same mistake again and God will forgive me. And but then you get conditioned. Well, I got to feel guilty because, oh my God, I did this. And now I got to go to confession and hope that he forgives me because, who knows, I'm such a bad sinner. And we forget that, like, God gives us grace. Like, there's grace and there's no need to like feel like you're a horrible human being because you make mistakes. It's all part of the experience, like you say, of evolving and growing. And when I got out of that fear of being conditioned in the Catholicism and knowing that there was something more, it was really cool because I started to explore that and I started to actually get comfortable with who I was and who I am, and being in places of solitude and allowing myself to be on my own and ask questions and journal and do these things that I was scared to do before because I thought it was the devil or somebody speaking to me. And, life is not about just going to church and having somebody tell you what's wrong and right. Because if that were the case, the way I see it is like, God didn't put us all here because God wanted to say, you are here and I'm going to judge you and how dare you, but I'm giving you free will, but don't screw up. Like, come on, you guys, like, seriously, God is love, like absolute love. When that baby is born and first put in your hands and you hold that child, that is pure, absolute love. That's what we are. It's not original sin. A baby doesn't come into this world and hold on to the sin of people from the past. That baby is pure love. And then we condition it and we change the way it is because we think this is right and that's right. And, we got to baptize. That's all stories that we tell ourselves to feel like we're valued. And every single person, everybody here has value. And God is within every single one of you. And if you doubt it, sit in front of the mirror, stare at yourself and see the beauty beyond what you see here. And I'm telling you, I've done it and I have cried and I have given thanks because I didn't know my value for so many years. And I wasn't comfortable. I was insecure and I felt less than. And to be where I'm at today, I'm in an immense state of gratitude. And now I can look at anybody in the world and I can say, you know what? I love you. And I mean it. I love you because I see you as God, as I see myself as God.
Very, very powerful. But aren't you in really a state of gratitude because you wake up in the morning and you turn over and you look?
Yeah, he actually is the best spooner ever. He feels so good next to me. And I like it when
I'm just kidding. That was very powerful.
I like it when I back up into him and I feel a little something.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving right along. But, one thing that hit me while Gunther was speaking, Jay, that's why I think that your work is so important. Because if you think about physical optimization as it relates to spiritual optimization, it doesn't matter how out of shape you are or how weak you are or in how bad of condition you are. If you begin to work on a program of spiritual or of physical optimization, if you begin to get a program like this, like the metabolic blowtorch diet, and begin to work on it, all you have to do is put in the work and you will begin to see some positive results. And then when you see the positive results, you think, I can do this. And you start working a little harder and you start getting a little more results and a little more results. And it correlates so directly to your spiritual life. No matter how bad you think you are, no matter how worthless you think you are, if you'll start doing the inner work, if you'll start trying to work on yourself as a person, you'll start seeing these little gains, and these little gains will turn into bigger gains, and they will show you and convince you that you really are divine. You really are sovereign. You really are free. You may never look like Monica or Jay, but you will look way better than you used to look. And more importantly, it'll give you the strength and the inspiration and the direct experience of, hey, if I can do this in my physical life, I can do it in my spiritual life. And the more physically optimized you get, I'm convinced that the more easy it is for you to become spiritually optimized as well.
Well, Jeff, real quick, and then Gunther, I want you to follow this. And I want you guys to pretty much talk because you guys, especially Gunther and Monica right now, have a really good dialogue. But You know,
Gunther.
the great Manly Hall has, you know, said in all of his books, and, you know, and I always go back to the one little pamphlet that I can't think of right now that he wrote in 1927 about mastery of the physical meat modem avatar comes from an understanding of the glands. And this was way before modern medicine knew anything about, like, you know, hormonal optimization and, you know, nutritional optimization, again, natural optimization. So there is something to be said about the ancient, you know, wisdom teaching masters, you know, whatever you want to call them, the hermeticists, whatever. They did know all of this stuff. And so all of this stuff has been there, but there was something about what Gunther said to me today in a text message before we decided to do the show. And he said, it's a difference between being a human being in servitude and a human being being free. And religion and politics and all of these other control levers of society keeps people shackled in the bonds of servitude, in their mindset, in their reality, in the way they carry themselves in life. And until you can, like, lift that bondage of servitude, and again, it's an invisible wall that ensnares and enslaves so many people. Until you get rid of that and throw that off of you, and again, it's invisible, it's not really there, but again, popular culture and all of these other things hold that, you know, fence around you. You're not going to live the life that Jeff was just talking about, or what Monica and Gunther are wholly aware of, because we are totally free. We have a choice. It doesn't matter where you're born on this planet. If you're born in abject poverty or abject wealth, you have a choice in how you carry yourself and how you take action and how you know, choose things. And at the end of the day, we're all nothing more than a product of the decisions we make. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think even if you're paying attention to I like to call it our physical vessel, it's also a sign of, like, respect is another form of love. And when you can respect, you know, like, even when, you know, somebody's with their mate, if you respect that person, you're also showing love. And so when you can respect this vessel and you allow it to work at its most optimal state, you're giving it love. And what reason would you not want to give your vessel love? I mean, this is where you're holding God within, and there's an important need for that.
Well said.
Monica, the thing that comes to my mind when you say that is, you know, we talk a lot in religious circles about rules and laws and doctrines,
right.
But Christ made it very, very simple. He said there's one real rule, and that rule is to love your neighbor as yourself. But inherently within that, how can you love your neighbor if you don't really love yourself? So the real greatest rule is learn to love yourself, because when you learn to love yourself, when you learn you have divinity within you, you can love yourself. And then knowing that you've got divinity in you, you can look at Jay and Gunther and Monica, know they have divinity in them, and then you begin to love them as well. So we really have to come from that place of self-love. And Gunther, moving on from that and right along with it, is this part of becoming what you describe as the angelic archetype?
Yeah, yeah. So they're as multidimensional beings, which we all are. We take on certain archetypes in different periods of our life. Sometimes they can be positive or negative or neutral or whatever, you know, however you would ascribe them to be. But you take on certain archetypes in different phases, and I think the angelic archetype is one of not just being in service too, but being a participant and being a steward of society and the planet. And what I mean by that specifically is that I think one of the big problems, or one of the big challenges we face right now, if we're just going to address the environment, for example, is that people have lost their relationship to living things, right?
Right.
Oh, great.
Right. So living in cities and being off the ground and not being connected to the earth and all, that's one aspect of it. But there's also a disregard for living things even in rural areas, and the degradation of lands and farmland and all of it. And so at a base level, we are living in at least in Western society by and large, where we don't have a relationship to life and living things. And that is highly problematic, because we're visitors here. We're custodians. planet, right? It's not ours to take. We have no right to ownership of living things, of land, of property. I mean,
anything. Yeah.
Property ownership is an important thing, provided that you're responsible, right?
Right.
But we don't really have really any connectedness to that, and so that we have to get back to that place. One of the, and this is not conspiratorial, but one of the downsides, of course, of technology is that we become disconnected. It's not the fact that it's digital or versus analog, but this idea that through interfaces, haptic or otherwise, cell phones, whatever it is, that you lose that relationship to the organic, and the organic is a divine. I call this, it's not just me, but it's providence. It's called divine providence. And providence, I don't just mean that in the biblical sense. It's providence is the dominion, the domain of nature and all of life, and being immersed in life and its energies, right? Because everything is energy.
Right.
So it's incredibly important that we return to that. And it can be simple things like being outside, being amongst nature, being in the water, being in the environment, being amongst the trees, or more profound things like rock climbing or surfing or any of the things that we do out in the open. But it's terribly important to have that relationship, because that is the essence of our existence, really.
And Gunther, it does take a force of will to do that. And it's inspiring to me, and it should be inspiring, I think, to the people that are listening to this. If a guy like you, whose whole life is technology and funding technology, if you can see and realize the importance and make getting out into nature and connecting with nature and getting your shoes off and getting in the sand, getting on the grass, then certainly the rest of us should learn from you and try to make that a priority in our life as well. What do you think, Jay?
Well, Jeff, I want to give Gunther some serious props, because he's pretty he was. That's amazing. He was, not is anymore, but he will be again. But he was a very influential voice on Twitter and had a substantial following. And credit to him, bro. He blew it out. It's gone. He just walked away from it one day. He just said, you know what? I'm reinventing myself. I'm not attached to any of this. I'm not attached to anything. I can walk. And, he still writes on Medium, and we'll post his Medium account, because Jeff, this guy has written some profound blogs on Medium, and all the inner circle that I, walk around with and hang out with and commiserate, that Jeff used to be a part of in the WhatsApp group, know Gunther and are very familiar with his work and stuff, but he is an absolutely, again, it's just a credit to him that he is able to say, like, you know what, it's not me. I don't care if I lose, potential money or wages or income or, long-term capital appreciation or any of that stuff in the world that he walked away from it. And it's like, when he told me that today, I was thinking to myself, well, shit, can I actually do that? Well, no, I mean, it's a serious question. And I also wanted to make a comment, something that you said earlier, because we are all slaves to it. And Jeff, you and I have talked about this on our show a million times, and Gunther, to his credit, because you didn't know this, was the guy that really set this up in my brain probably a couple of years back. But he's always been saying that there are going to ultimately, through the transhumanism movement, and if it turns into a war or rebellion or uprising or whatever it is, there will be two divergent species coexisting in parallel. And that, as you and I, Jeff, Gunther, that's why our show is called The Last Stand. We're the last version of humanity versus whatever this chipped, enslaved, transhumanist, transmogrified, automatons, whatever they become. Like, we know who we are. We will not allow that, and they will probably do it. So there'll be these two divergent species. But just one other thing I wanted to say back to the angelic, right before you asked Gunther. When I tell guys as a very masculine male that I love them, I mean that. I've never not once said that, so many guys, when they tell another guy they love them, they're saying, no homo, or they have to add that stupid asterisk, When we can get to a point as masculine men and even beta men, and we can tell another man who we respect and admire for what they do, for their championing of society, for their service to others, that we love them, and not be ashamed of that and be intimidated or feel weird and demeaned and have to say, I'm not a homo. that's when stuff is going to truly change. And I don't know why so many people don't understand that. I get so much pushback and feedback from guys online when they say, dude, why do you always tell people you love them? Why do you say you love and light so much in your messages? Why do you write all of your articles with that message in there? And I go, because it's the truth. Because that's how I feel. That's truly how I feel. If you do not feel that, and you're not like imbuing that and energetically transferring that to other people, then you've got some work to do. As Jeff always says, you got to get busy.
Jay, if we were on a camping trip and there was only one sleeping bag, I would spoon with you.
I know you would, brother. That's because we love each other, man.
I love you too, Jeff.
I would totally spoon with you too, Monica. No problem.
But it's interesting because I think so many of us forget that we have that capacity. Like every single one of us has the capacity to love unconditionally.
We do.
And yet we put up so many different conditions as to what would allow us to love somebody, whether it's your father, like for example, my dad was an alcoholic, severe alcoholic growing up, and he wasn't around. And so, I could sit there and hold on to resentment and be like, well, my dad doesn't deserve my love because he was never around when I was growing up, and I never had a father, and I always felt lack, and we were on welfare. And if he did come around, he beat my mom, and how dare he, I'm not going to give him any love. And my dad and I have an amazing relationship today.
They do.
Because we have been able to move beyond all that, and it's an unconditional love. And my dad's going to be like, sometimes he can be short and temperamental, and he's 72 years old, and he's going to have his ways of being. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's like, that's just my dad. I love him. I love him regardless. And he's got 36 years of sobriety too. So.
Well, great for him. Monica, it's interesting you say that, because my dad, every time, I played a lot of sports growing up, and he was always there for everything, but he wasn't an I love you guy. He wasn't a hug you guy. He wasn't a kiss you guy. But I realized that he was loving me to the utmost high end of his capability. He has what I call diminished emotional capacity, but he did the very best that he could do. And I love him for that. And I respect him for that. And he was one hell of a dad.
Yeah, and he's probably, his love language is probably quality time. And so for him,
Monica, I bet it is.
In his way, he was giving you quality time, showing you, babe, I'm here for you.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we don't interpret it. And a lot of life is just on how we define it. You can define something as breaking you down and making it the worst moment of your life, or you can define it as something that's a stepping stone to greater and more wonderful things. And it's all in the way we define it. And, just like.
Go ahead, Gunther.
No, I was going to build off of what you were both saying. My dad turned 86 in November. He's a Holocaust survivor. And one of the things I had to move through, and this is recently, as a man, as a human being, was a lot of anger that was, I suppose, genealogical, things that I inherited from him and his family over centuries of time, on both sides, my mother and my father, but my dad in particular. And I suppose the realization that I came to was that, I'm his parent. And I think there's sort of a radical concept here for all of us, where we enter the world and I suppose we choose our parents.
Yeah, we absolutely do.
And they rear us and they bring us in, and then there's a reversal, right?
Yes.
Where we become the parent. It's sort of the parent-child relationship sort of flips on itself, and I think over time that certainly happened with me, but in another respect, and it's interesting, Monica, that you shared that the communication aspect of your relationship. I realized that I never really had a direct conversation with my father about what I was here to do and what things meant to us as a father and son. And so in short, I wrote him a letter about 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
And I printed out, in big. I put it on nice letterhead, and it was enlarged, because his eyesight's lagging.
Sure.
and I sent it in a tube, and I sent it snail mail, UPS ground delivery.
That's awesome.
And I didn't have the balls to call him right away because I was afraid of the response, but I called him today, and he said, "Son, I got the letter. Thank you. It was very thoughtful. I really appreciated it." And that was it. And he's going to pass soon. And we had some completion back in June, but again, to build off of what you guys were saying, it was an acknowledgement and acceptance of his role in bringing us into the world, and also accepting my role as taking over as a father figure in the world, and acknowledging him for the gifts that he's given me in life, because he's an incredible man. He was a physician for 53 years, professor of medicine at UCLA. I mean, he's quite accomplished, and survived the Holocaust,
Right.
served in the Korean War, all that stuff, but never cut corners.
Right.
And despite his flaws, and I will also say that battles with alcohol and pills for a long time was a big issue for me growing up. But moved through it, and I had to move through that anger. Frankly, it was, right. and I had realized that it affected every relationship I'd ever had in my life. It was,
absolutely.
Well, you know what, Gunther, it's absolutely amazing, wow. And credit to you, but all three of us, Jeff, all three of us have the exact same type of parental upbringing. My dad was also not a lover in communication. There was no physical, emotional give. I mean, Monica can tell you, Jeff, you know this a little bit. Gunther, you don't know as much because I haven't told you a lot about my dad, but I still, to this day in my life, my father, we just came back from their 50th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
My mom and dad. They raised 9 children. Technically, my mom gave birth to 10. Incredible. And I still, to this day, have never had in my life a conversation with my dad, mano a mano.
Is that right?
About me and him, my role, his role. I mean, it's just, he is, I mean, without, denigrating him, because that's not the purpose. It's just, he is just not that person. And, right. You said something profound, which is very true. And I know that Jeff and Monica and I all aspire to the same thing. There is absolutely no question that we choose our parents when we come into this, whatever this is. And when you look at life through that lens, through that prism, then your understanding of taking responsibility for who you are is so much more enhanced mm-hmm. than sitting there with a victim mindset and blaming your parents right. for the lot that you have in life, or for whatever it is that you find yourself like lacking, or what ails you. It's incredible how cathartic that is, to take that ownership, to realize that you chose those parents, you chose your mom and dad for a reason. And then to once accepting that, then really doing some deep inner work and soul searching as to why. Well, and then look at them, but then just look at them for like, okay, well, what is it that I, chose them for? And I've done a lot of that in the last 2 years of my life. And it's incredible how I look at things totally different from that perspective, which I never had before. Go ahead, Monica.
I was just going to say that it's a part of that is also like taking responsibility for choosing them, but also taking responsibility and ownership for how you viewed the relationship. Yes, because so many of us will look at our parents and we put them on this pedestal, or we think, well, you're my parent, you should have been like this. Right. And like my son didn't speak to me for 5 years when my ex and I split up. And when I first met with him, the first time that we actually had a conversation after that, after the 5 years, and I sat down with him. So I had actually left him a long voicemail message on his phone, reading him a letter that I wrote, taking responsibility for the breakdown in our relationship and how that evolved. And he actually listened to it. And then he called me and he said, no, you have it all wrong. You have it all wrong. I need to sit down with you so I can clear this up. And at this time, he's 19. And he had all of these rules on how I had to show up as a parent. And I wasn't showing up in this capacity as a parent. And that's why he didn't have me in his life for 5 years. That's why I lost 5 years with my son. And I started thinking like, wow, like he had all these different conditions that he wanted me to be, and he completely excluded me from his life because I had to be this kind of a parent, and he wasn't like that. And when you take that and you turn it around and you look at my own parents and I say, wow, like if I were to say that to them and say, you had to show up like this in order to be a good parent for me,
Yeah.
I would actually cause more friction in our relationship than just understanding like, wait a second, they didn't get a rule book on how to be the best parent to Monica because Monica was going to be like this. So let me go down these steps and make sure that I do everything correctly. There's no such thing. We're all doing the best we can. I thought I was doing a freaking damn good job raising my kids. And then my kids tell me, man, Mom, you were like this and you were like this. And I'm just like, oh my God, I was trying so hard to be the best parent. And look at, I screwed up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's what, if anything, if any of you have a relationship that's not great with your parents, look at the way you view that relationship before you look at your parents and blame them. Because a lot of what's going on in that breakdown of the relationship is your judgment around it.
You're pretty good at this, bro.
Great point. Great point. Gunther, how do you recommend on a practical level to you have here in one of your bullet points to nurture internal power, the self-love, the self-responsibility, the self-expression, the things that we're talking about? How do you practically go about co-creating this and making it even more broad to where it encompasses not only your world, but the world that we all live in together?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. There's a phrase that we use now that embodies truth, which is we all make assumptions.
Yep.
About the world, about ourselves, about other people, about situations and all that. And what I like to tell people, and I didn't originate this phrase, of course, I mean, nothing is original, I suppose, but that you should always test your assumptions against reality. Okay. So if you're having a pervading thought or a feeling of that it's kind of stifling or overwhelming and you're not really sure, just go test it, right? Go out into the world and test it. And it can be as radical as, going to an institution or a prison or a place of intensity and darkness and experiencing it for yourself, or as simple as, you make an assumption about your neighbor and then you go over to their house and you talk to them, whatever it is. But we make assumptions and we don't test our assumptions against reality. And that's a very practical way of just experience things in the world. And to follow up on that a little bit, I would also say that, and I talked about ideas, that we sort of exist at the level of ideas right now. Everybody's got ideas. There's a lot of talking heads. There's a lot of ideology and memes and belief systems and all this stuff, but we don't test them, right? We don't live them and we don't embody them. And so it's just simple things, just putting yourself out there, taking risks, being uncomfortable. I know it sounds silly, but it's
good.
But most of the time we don't do it.
Because we're afraid they'll break down and we'll have to come up with something else, Gunther.
Right. That's right.
It's totally true.
It takes some, whether you're a boy or a girl, it takes some testicular fortitude to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's so easy, guys, today with social media. Oh, go ahead, Gunther. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I think I know where you're going with this too, but because you and I talked about this earlier today. But I mean, if you look at Me Too, Black Lives Matter, all the shit that's going down in all the racial and sexual and gender divides that are going on, and you talk to young people in particular, and I'm not going to make this about millennials because I think it's transgenerational.
Yeah, it is.
It crosses all generations, but people are attaching themselves to ideas and not having generative conversations.
Right.
Yes. By generative conversations is they're arguing over belief systems, but they're not having real heartfelt conversations amongst themselves about what they're seeing, what they're really actually seeing in the world.
So the Me Too is real. It's just not the Me Too they're talking about.
Right. And it's really sad because the anger that I see in the world, young people and young women, for example, and this hatred of men, it's terrible. It's sad, and that's not an indictment of them. I'm not indicting them. It's just I'm a man. I was raised predominantly by my mother, and she raised her two boys to be honorable men and dignified human beings. And I'm not going to apologize for that ever. Right. I won't do it.
You shouldn't.
but I don't see that same kind of love and respect from a lot of feminists, for example, right? And I'm generalizing a bit, but not really. It's
right.
It's really sad because men and women don't need to compete. They should come together in love and truth and power,
Right.
and they bring so many divine gifts that the either one of them doesn't have. It's so complementary. That's what should be celebrated. And
right. And honestly,
right.
Oh,
Yeah.
And what I was going to say to piggyback on what you're saying is that look, you're male, I'm female. We're different in that respect.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it great. There's a yin and a yang, and there's a reason why there's a male and a female.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be a female, and it's okay to be a male, and it's okay for a male to be dominant, and it's okay for a woman to be okay with her sensuality and her submissiveness.
Yeah.
You know, that's okay. And right now, so many women think, well, I got to show up as strong. And I went somewhere one time and I was like, woo. And then this younger girl was like, oh, I like it when a woman speaks her mind. And I'm thinking to myself, like, it doesn't matter. I'm a woman or a man. Like there's no basis. As soon as you start putting people in a box and you start surrounding people with hatred, all you're doing is you're like, basically that's a projection of you and your own insecurity and your own things that are going on inside of you that you haven't dealt with. So it's not the other person. It's the person who's saying, well, no, I'm a woman and I'm strong, or you're not treating me this way and all this other stuff. You know, I had to be a provider when my kids were little and when I was younger. And I was in a relationship where I had to be the dominant one. And I was so off and I knew it and I wasn't happy. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is not what I want. I don't want to be the male in the relationship.
And allow me to be non-politically correct, but that is where the train has gone off the tracks.
Yes.
Because now we are in a society that is pervasively, as you well said, Gunther, pushing this reverse sexual identification characteristic where it's encouraged for women to be masculine and to dominate their husbands or their spouses or their boyfriends, or to take like what is naturally a masculine, you know, from a biological moral law imperative or standard to become the opposite. And Monica just said it, like, you ask any strong woman what they want. And this goes down to, like, you take 1,000 strong, powerful, quote unquote, alpha female women. And you ask them what they want at the end of the day, you will not get one who's honest. That they want to be with a weak man that they can push around and oppress. That's not what they want. So this push, you know, again, I look at, it's the transhumanism culture. Let's just be honest. It's whatever you call that, this deviancy, this whatever it is. They have decided that it's okay for the woman to be the man. And at the end of the day, when the women that embrace that, you know, stereotype or whatever that is now, whatever you want to classify it as, this archetype, they're miserable. They literally are completely frustrated sexually. They're frustrated mentally. They're frustrated spiritually. They're frustrated from every capacity because they are not expressing their divine femininity in any capacity. They're acting like a man.
Yeah.
And it's not right.
And then saying that, that hierarchies are patriarchal, which they're not, by the way. Actually,
That's
hierarchies
nonsense.
exist everywhere in nature. And if we're going to look at this through a biological or scientific lens, actually most of the hierarchies in the animal kingdom are female-led.
Absolutely.
Completely untrue. Now, granted, in modern Western civilization, the predominant power structures have been male-oriented, and that's actually been by design. But it's not true that hierarchies are patriarchal. It's not really true that power is patriarchal.
Right.
I mean, Jordan Peterson's talked about this, and he's right. Actually, I mean, he's not ahistorical in his viewpoint. So, but the point being is that why are we competing with each other?
Right.
Yeah, it's a joke.
Why are men and women competing with each other? It's so absurd. I mean, as you said, as all of you said, you know, divine feminine is so special. It's such a beautiful thing. Divine masculine is such a beautiful thing, and the combination thereof is so it's co-creation. It's like it's fucking evolution. Why?
And if you
why
think
would,
about it, we've
yeah.
all been a male or a female at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who really cares who you are right now?
Why can't
Right.
we embrace both in ourselves right
Exactly.
now?
I think
Right.
I was distinctly male in the last 6 lives, but
Monica was definitely a dude before me, dude. No doubt.
But Gunther, how do we let go of all this shit and move beyond it practically?
Yeah, good question.
well, it's funny. One of my great friend and business partner who actually lives with me in Palm Beach, Martin Casado, gave me a wonderful book, few books actually, but one of the things was on the theme of self-acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so simple but so profound. It's about self-acceptance, and I personally, I think a lot of the anger that I've manifested over time, a lot of the dysfunction that I've exhibited in different behaviors and choices and bad decisions or whatever it was a lack of acceptance. I never really accepted myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had, coming into the world, I never thought the world was right or just or purposeful in the way that I thought it could be. And I think we all feel that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a unique story, but it's about self-acceptance. And that only came for me recently, if I'm going to be perfectly honest about it. And so I think when you accept yourself for who you are, and by truthful or true, then you can let go of all the other stuff, and then it manifests anyways. I mean, you let go of monetary anxiety, and then the money comes anyways. You let go of love anxiety, and the love comes anyways. And you attraction, intention, allowance, balance. There's a deliberate intention behind that, because you're accepting of self, and then it manifests. And I don't really have another answer. I think that's it.
Well, that goes back to whether you're Christian or Muslim or wherever you are, the message of the Christ was, again, love your neighbor as yourself. And to love your neighbor, you really got to love yourself first. So if we can do that, then I think we can get to where we need to go. But that takes courage. That takes breaking out of a box. That takes not listening to what is, being pumped into our brains 24/7. And you have to be man enough or woman enough to blaze your own trail and wag your own tail.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so true, because when I was in my 20s and 30s, I had a really hard time with self-acceptance. I mean, extremely. I was one of the most insecure people you would ever know. I couldn't even look at somebody in their eyes and say what my name was, because I didn't feel worthy enough for that. And you guys, it's crazy, because acceptance is the highest form of love. And when you can truly accept who you are, that allows you to open up to other people, and it allows you to be like the perfect expression of love. And it's crazy, because when I think back to who I was before and who I am today, it's a completely different animal. And I think to myself, like, God, like, I can't believe back then I was so down on myself and so like miserable that like I would go around judging other people and thinking like, wow, like, how come she's so pretty, or how come he's so attractive and I couldn't be with someone like, and I would have all of these thoughts going through my head, feeling like I wasn't worthy, feeling like it wasn't this. And all of that stuff, when you start to come and you feel like complete, like there's a lot of people right now, for example, like at the holidays, they get depressed and they're lonely and they think nobody loves me. When if they went and they just started loving themselves, it wouldn't matter that they're by themselves.
Monica, what turned it around for you?
Yeah.
What turned it around for me is, like my dad says, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
And I looked at myself one day in the mirror, and I remember thinking to myself, like, is this the way I want to live the rest of my life? And I would hear this like voice inside of me, like, there's more to you. There's more to you. It's okay. It's okay. Like, and I did a lot of like, like Jason says, I'm a self-help junkie. And I read a lot. I went to like classes, and I had this like awakening at this one class that I went to. And this one class, like all of a sudden I felt I was beautiful. I was like,
wow,
oh my God, I'm beautiful. And it wasn't anything, an external thing. And I went to the beach by myself afterwards because I wanted to anchor in what I had learned. See, what happens is a lot of times we go to these classes or we do this work and we go on living our life like nothing happened. so it's really important to anchor things in. Like when you have a pivotal moment, okay, go off on your own and anchor that moment so it can reside within you, and you can like capture that moment, and you can almost bottle it up. So when you have another moment when you're feeling like crappy, because we all do, you'd be like, wait a second, I am beautiful. And I'm getting older, and sometimes, I want to look and I want to pay attention to this or that's wrong. I'm like, heck, I'm beautiful. I love you, babe. It's all good. You're going to get older and wrinkly. It's all good. Jay might not love you like I do.
No comment.
That's not true.
But the day that I had that happen, this is how crazy it is, you guys. And this is how I know God is within. That day that I went to the beach and I sat there and I put my feet in the sand, and I just like was looking out in the ocean, and I was asking myself these questions and going like, so I am beautiful, and it's okay to be me, and it's okay to love who I am. And it's like all these things came to my head, and I just sat there and I sobbed. I was crying and crying and crying. I was looking at the little kids playing on the beach, and I was just like, and then I finally like composed myself, and I thought, okay, I feel great. I feel wonderful. This is awesome. I'm ready to go. And I went home, and I kid you not, every single song on the radio was, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, you're loved. And I was just like, oh my God, more reassurance. And I'm like crying. But those are the things that happen when you really, truly connect and you anchor in what it is that the lesson there, the experience. And
a lot of that is you manifesting it too, Monica, through that energetic projection.
That's right.
Well, she manifested. I mean, Jeff, you know the story. I mean, if you want to tell it real quick, she completely manifested me into her life. And then she's now taught me the power of manifestation, and everything that I've accomplished in the last 4 years is completely me saying that I was going to do it, creating the plan, and then seeing it out. And it's all happening now. Mm. Any one of us watching this show, supporting this community, we all have the power to manifest anything that we desire in this realm. But you have to take massive action in order to do it, right? If you're in the 6th, 8th, 9th, whatever dimension, it's a thought form construct, and you have what you want. You manifest it instantly. But in this dimension, you have to work at it. You have to put, actions, pad to paper, pen to paper, plan it, organize it, follow through.
But there's also a beingness associated with it. Because if the beingness isn't there, when I first started real estate and I was attempting to get deals and do all these different things, and I remember like thinking to myself, like, oh my God, they said I have to door knock and I have to talk to all these people, and I should be getting business, and I'm talking to all these people and nobody wants to work with me. Why doesn't anybody want to work with me? And I used to get like so frustrated because I would go on these appointments and they would choose somebody else. And I remember sitting in my car this one time, because back then, like my ex didn't really make much money, and I was supporting the family, and I was working 7 days a week. I was working all these different hours, and I was working off of commission only. And I remember thinking to myself, like, don't these people know that I got a family to support? Like, I have all these things that, these people don't get it. And I didn't even stop to think like it was my beingness. It was me repelling people because I was so freaking desperate. I was commission breath. I wasn't truly there to help the person. So why would anybody want to work with me?
Well, now, so this is an interesting point that you're raising. Okay. This is the difference between manifesting things and manifesting value. Right. And what I mean by that is there's a very, very pivotal universal law called the law of deliberate intent.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
there's a book on that too. I read it.
Right. There's a very simple example. Like, I can manifest a red house, but is the red house the house that I want to live in? Does it have good energy? Is there love in it? Or is it just a red house? Is it just a structure? Right. So most often in life, and this happens a lot with New Ageism, is it's sort of like, well, you can manifest whatever you want. And then people accumulate all this stuff and they go, oh shit, what does it mean?
Right.
I'm not happy. I'm not joyful. Right. So deliberate intention is a really important thing, because you it's not just setting an intention, it's deliberately putting foci into the thing that you're manifesting, and you actually mean it.
Right.
And what you get in return is something meaningful. I'll give you a very simple example. I was visiting my younger brother in Connecticut in a small town, and a guy came into the bar. He saw me, and I was dressed well, so he figured I had money, and I had a few bucks in my pocket. And I gave him money, but I did it passively. I did it dismissively. I wanted to get rid of him. And to be totally honest, but he stayed. And then he started busting my balls, and I'm not a guy that backs down. So I puffed up, and but this was my fault, right? I did not deliberately have an intention with him where that money that I was giving him would spawn some sort of an outcome or a conversation, and then it just escalated into a debate, and then my ego kicked in, and I was basically like, "Fuck you! I'm not some average white guy. I'll knock you on your ass," basically. Not the right response.
Right.
Not unwarranted either. But my point is that had I deliberately intended to give him that money with an outcome in mind, or just being real, that situation would not have happened.
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
Wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
You're right. And Monica always teaches me that when you give freely, you give with no attachment, no expectation of return. You're doing it because you feel consciously okay to do it and you want to do it. And it doesn't even, like, I've now gotten to a point in my life that I give away stuff to people so often. I used to question it, like that, and the ego would come up and I'm like, why am I doing this? This person doesn't deserve this or whatever. But it's not even a thought process anymore for me, Gunther, and all of you guys. Like, if I see someone there, it doesn't matter how they got there, but because they're there, I know that I can help them by aiding them. And again, I hold no judgment beyond that. If I am, aiding and abetting them and they go right to the liquor store and they drink liquor, that's a choice that they made. I still, right? Yeah.
That's right.
And that's where you have to get to in life, where you don't have judgment on handing anything when you give freely. And that still is an issue that I deal with in my life now. Cause like, I still think about, like, when we get around the holidays, and I haven't done it as much this year, thankfully, but there's still time. I'll think about blocking, we got to stop spending, or we've spent enough this Christmas, or we've helped enough people, right?
That program.
So it's like you get into that mindset, and then you literally, as you know, because again, it's law of attraction, it's vibration, it's rate of spin, you just repel. And everything you start harboring as a fear becomes an insecurity that you now attract to you. And it literally carries on into January.
Yep.
And look, you guys, I can also add to that in this respect. Like, so we raised Jay's girls that are 9 and 11, essentially. And their mom lives in Vegas, and
she's at the house right now.
I allow her to stay at our home for the holidays because it allows the girls to be with their mom. And I would resist her being there sometimes, and it would cause even more friction in
2 nights ago.
And no,
you're fine. You've been good. I know the energy. Go ahead.
Yeah, but the whole energy around it all, like what I feel like, because I'm thinking sometimes, like back when, like maybe a couple years ago, and the girls would act a certain way, and there was certain challenges, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is my house and I can't live in my own house. And I have Jay's ex living here and she doesn't know how to be a parent. And I'm so freaking frustrated. And why do I have to do this? Is my life. And it's, and I even told her at the beginning of this year, I said, I would really appreciate it if you didn't stay at the house when you come visit the girls, because it's just causing too much friction. The girls don't act, And she wasn't coming to see the girls. And I started thinking, okay, so I can keep her away and cause the girls not to have time with their mom, or I can say, okay, let's see how we can make this work. So I said, okay, it was a couple months ago.
You just became a stronger person and you stopped labeling it.
But she's been at the house like it'll be almost a week now. And sometimes if I sit there and focus on the things I don't like and all the things that are going wrong, it really, really irks me. And so sometimes I have to like, okay, wait a second. I'm doing this to myself.
Yep.
I'm causing this. What can I do and be in this present moment? Because at this time, I don't feel good. And
well, I caught you last night and I helped you and I talked you through it, because I can see when you start spinning. I mean, in her defense,
he thinks I'm spinning when I'm
in her defense, she is allowing something that less than 1% of women in the whole planet would ever do. Right? Like literally, she's allowing my ex-wife to stay in our house for, this brief period of time so that they can be exposed to their mom, who is a Disneyland mom, period. End of story. No judgment of her. That's just who she is. But, credit to Monica that she allows this. But it's funny because she just explained it, but I'm also aware of it, and I can point it out to her when she starts spinning. And she's totally true. I mean, a woman, it's a woman's house. It's a woman's nest. They have a specific way that they want their house to be. And it's their, you know, they're in control. It's their house, right? And so like when you have another woman in there and she's kind of like mothering, you know, the two children that Monica's always mothering, it's not easy.
But then what's cool is, so like now she's there and like, we're going to have people over for Christmas. And she's look, I admit it. She's a much better cook than I am. I am not a great cook. I burn things. And so she's like, I'm like, okay, so can you cook some things for Christmas? And she's like, went to the store and she's making this, she's doing all this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? This is a true blessing. Like, it's so awesome that she's here because I don't have to cook, you know, and that's really cool. And so
you saw a way around it.
Yeah. The whole shift in the perception of all like, and it could be so much worse because it could be like my ex who won't even communicate with me or won't even have a conversation with me for the better of the kids at all. Because in his mind, I'm the enemy.
The devil incarnate.
And it sucks because really like the intention behind it all is can't we just all like get along and love each other? Really, if you think about what we're teaching our kids that it's okay to forgive and it's okay to move. It's okay to be stronger.
I don't think we have to get along. I think we have to accept each other. I think getting along is a concept.
Well, what I mean by getting along is that you're not sitting there attacking one another, fighting.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what I mean by getting along, because
sure.
It's the other way with my ex where it's like
there's nothing.
It's complete like different story. So so that's where like the whole like intention behind it all is like, wow, like I can create a great relationship on this end and not have any issues with it because I'm choosing to look at it from a different perspective and having an actual intention behind it and being, okay, wait a second. My intention is for us to have a great holiday and for us to enjoy this time together. So me bitching about her being here is not gonna make it a great holiday.
That's well said, and something that we can all take into the holidays. And Gunther, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. This has been some good stuff, don't you think, Jay?
Amazing, man. I mean, you guys, this is totally different than, you know, from
very much different and very much needed.
No, I'm glad we didn't have to talk about the Illuminati.
A message of positivity.
Well, you guys are all way smarter than me, and I don't know any of that stuff. And I would sit here and be in a look.
Just a funny side story, and then we'll end it. And you know, let Gunther tell people how they can interact with him and be part of his blog on Medium. But so when Gunther and I first met each other, and I'm going to give a very 2 million foot summary. Like, he found out that I knew what I knew, and then I found out what he knew, and he knew. And both of us were so like, "Is this real?" We were like talking on the phone for like 90 minutes, and it was incredible, you know. And just both of us were just like, we blew each other's mind with like our awareness and like what we knew and stuff. And it was kind of like, I felt like it was like a holy shit, there's people out there like me. You know, so it was amazing. And anyway, I'm blessed, bro. And, you know, I know Jeff feels the same way. We're privileged to have you on here tonight. It was a very positive message. You know, the rainbow unicorn didn't hurt things, but it was cool to hear other people talk instead of me and Jeff, who, you know,
absolutely.
But you guys have great voices, very sexy voices.
So Gunther, how can people connect with you? You're getting a lot of amazing feedback in the chat. So how can people connect with you, or how can people work with you in any capacity that you see fit?
Well, yeah. So I do write sporadic, infrequently on Medium. I have my Medium blog there. I'm also on LinkedIn. I got rid of all my other social media channels. I didn't want the noise, and as you said, so there, and then LinkedIn, and then my companies. I have two companies. One is Novena Capital. We have a website, and then Next Block Group, and those are business sites. But our work is dedicated to social and ecological change, and we're very serious about that. And we will be writing more in different formats along those lines. I'm also writing a book. I'm finishing a book right now.
Me too.
About you too.
Yeah, she is.
There you go. Everybody's
Me
writing
too.
It's a new economic paradigm, but it's very applied. It's a format that I tried a few years. So I'm calling it a fictional business narrative, but it's 7 characters that are from different walks of life, creating these new ecological systems and using technology and human willpower to do that. And you know, that's what I'm working on. So I'm going to self-publish it, and it'll have a donation component for the research that we do. We're not going to take any profits from it.
That's awesome, man. Hey, I have somebody though that can help you self-publish who's amazing in Florida. I can connect you with him. He's like my guy. Like I mean, he's got a company, but you know, if you're doing that for a nonprofit, he'll probably just not charge you.
Great.
And he's amazing.
Well, this piece is, the book will be a nonprofit effort.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let me just thank Kat for the great gift she gave me. I don't know if you can see that or not, but she gave me a Star Trek tri-dimensional chess set, which is going to be featured
my gosh.
in my background here very, very soon. Thanks so much for that. And thanks to all of you for being here. And if you're not doing anything else on Christmas night, I will be on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're in the Coast, it'll be 10 p.m. till midnight. If you're on the East Coast, it'll be 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. Jay and I will be back tomorrow for another edition of The Last Stand. You're not going to want to miss that.
And I'm working on a very high-level surprise guest.
You mean higher level than what we did tonight?
Well, not higher level from an intellect than Gunther, because I don't know if you can get that high, but definitely someone in the truthing community who a lot of people would be very excited to see show up on Christmas Eve night. So it's not confirmed, but I'm working very hard on it.
I think you should have our dog Thor come on.
But we will be there tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern time.
Love and power. This is the angel sign right here.
Spend your Christmas Eve with the Last Stand.
This is the ground crew right here. That's our sign.
Like this?
Yeah. Like that,
what are we doing?
Isn't that Spock?
That Nanu?
Oh, that's Spock.
It's not Spock. No,
you
got the trailing finger and the three main fingers.
I got to make my hand do that.
That's how we do it. Well, you have to break your pinky finger.
Oh, so you got to be committed. Gunther, thanks so much for being here, my friend. Jay, Monica, thank you for being here. Everyone in the chat room, thank you for being here. You three, please sit there for a second so I can say goodbye to you. Thank you to everyone in the chat room. If I don't see you before Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hopefully, we'll see you here tomorrow night. Hopefully, you will like this video before you leave. Hopefully, you will subscribe both here and over on the Decoders of Truth. Gunther, you're not on YouTube right now, right?
No.
I'm not on YouTube or Facebook or any of that stuff, but no. I can get a hold of you guys anytime.
Excellent. Thanks again for being here. We do appreciate every single one of you, and we'll see you again tomorrow night. Remember, we are the last generation of real humans. Let's get busy.